Stream, and I was just gonna get started. We have 7 games today, so I'm hoping to get through them, and yeah, really appreciate everyone for sending in so many games and for giving us a lot of material to work with. It works so much better when everyone sends like a lot of ideas and a lot of games and stuff. So I always really appreciate it when people send things over because it makes the analysis like that much better. Yeah, so the first game was from Cobra R8 Cobra from Reddit. Hey, good morning, MetaRay. How are you? I'm just gonna pull this up on the analysis board. Just bring in the PGN, and here we go. Okay, so R8 Cobra plays white in this game and wins. But I still think there's definitely some improvements to look at. One move that I thought was interesting. Yeah, no, thank you very much for being here, MetaRay, and yeah, happy to see you. Hey, good morning, Tarash. How's it going? But yeah, so basically, white plays the Italian game here, and then black plays an interesting move that I haven't seen too frequently. But I want to see how to take a look. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Tarash. Glad that worked. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so here, basically, white plays the Italian game, and then black plays this move, which I think is probably fairly low on on the list, but it is here, bishop to b4. So I'm kind of wondering how we can, sure, yeah, no, send it over, Trash. We're full for this morning, and just in case anyone is curious, I can't do the stream tonight. So the next stream is going to be at 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning. But after today, we'll be back on a normal schedule. Jen was nice enough to throw me a birthday party for tonight. My birthday was like a month ago though, but Jen's throwing me a birthday party for tonight, so I can't do the 6:05 p.m. stream. Thank you. It's belated. My birthday was a month ago, but Jen's been keeping me in suspense about what my birthday party would be. So. I unfortunately cannot do the stream tonight, but I will be doing something fun, I'm sure. Anyways, yeah, thank you very much for sending that to Rosh, and thank you for the birthday wishes. So yeah, basically here, white plays the Italian game, and black plays bishop to b4. I was sort of curious. Thank you, Agent. But yeah, no. So here I was really curious about how how does white sort of exploit this misplaced bishop? One of the thanks MetaRay, thanks everyone. Just really appreciate it. But yeah, so bishop doesn't really belong on this diagonal. Among other things, the move that challenges the justification for this bishop immediately. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so knight to c3 is the move that basically draws in this bishop. It raises the question that should this bishop take the knight or not? And the question is like if the bishop's on the b4 square and the knight. Thank you very much, Kira. Good morning, and thank you for being on the stream. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, no. So here, yeah, I guess I was curious. About knight c3 is like basically saying from a fundamental perspective, like if the bishop's played to b4, why is it there if not to exploit either the pin or to trade off for the knight? But yeah, knight c3 is an idea. Basically straightforward development, and then basically sort of wondering why the bishop is on b4 as opposed to c5. C5 being the most common diagonal in the Italian game. Bishop to b4, knight c3, knight f6, d3, d6, and this looks like a pretty reasonable kind of Italian game. The bishop never moved from c5 to b4, so I guess technically that saves a tempo. But here, basically white is equalized. It's an equal position out of the Italian game. This position is going to have characteristics like bishop to g5, probably h6, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3, and then white will then undermine these moved pawns with h4. But it's interesting. But yeah, so yeah, this bishop goes to g5, and basically the opening kind of continues in a normal Italian game fashion. So I'm not sure that main line, that knight c3, is the correct refutation. A more direct response. Wow, great job, Kiro. No, I think you're in good shape. I went over our game last night, Kiro, and I think it reflected something that's pretty legitimate, which is that you got an excellent position out of the. And I'm just in case for anyone else who wasn't here. Kiro and I played a few blitz games, and Kiro basically got an excellent position in one of them against me, and basically yeah, no, I hope that analysis was helpful. Kiro got an excellent position out of the opening, and the middle game kind of went in a complicated direction tactically. But I think especially given that you were up so much, it's not long until you really can beat a lot of good NMs. At the end of the day, NMs have put in some time. But they're very beatable, and becoming an NM is something that I strongly believe that everyone can do with enough study. It's difficult but possible. So it wouldn't surprise me, if people are really willing to stick with it. NM's a very achievable goal, I think, for everyone. Strongly believe that. But Kiro's not. Kiro can win games against NMs periodically. He almost beat me. And with more tactical preps, I'm sure he would have won the game. Won the game that we played. So that analysis was the last one of the stream last night. But I really wanted to take a moment and tell basically recognize that Kiro is playing well, and the fact that he's beating an NM and that he's going to beat NMs at least sometimes is not surprising to me at all. NM does vary from country to country. FM is a little bit more standardized, but I don't know. It really depends on how hard you work and how much time you put in. But I know from experience, anyone can become an NM. I strongly believe that, very confident in that, and encourage you guys to pursue that goal, if not further goals. And I strongly believe that you will make it to that level if you put the time in. That everyone can do that. I don't play FIDE that frequently. It's somewhere above, I think 20, 60, 50, somewhere around there. It's usually it's over 2,000, but not particularly high. It's not super actively played. So I don't have that high a FIDE rating. But anyways, FIDE is the standardized system. That's a good system too. It's can be difficult to get FIDE tournaments in the United States, but the US is getting a little bit better with that. FIDE games are also skewed towards a slower time control, which is also part of the FIDE rating equation. Let me see. Feel free to keep sending games over, Kiro. Very interested in seeing them. So bishop b4, c3, bishop a5, and then d4, I think. Either d4 or b4. But I think this is probably, this is a solid move, knight c3. If we go to the opening book here, against this unusual bishop to b4 move, knight c3 is most of the games, castles is one of the games, and c3, which I think is the most intuitive, is what the engine gives us the best. c3, bishop a5, b4. So b4, the value of b4 is basically that, on d4, this leads to a lot of complexity and a pin along the a5 e1 diagonal. So that's a little bit tricky. White heads this off by playing b4, and the bishop moves to b6, and now a4, a6, a5, I believe, and the bishop's over there, and then queen can play to b3 and start an attack. Development will go to d3, knight d2, or maybe get the bishop to e3 first, then knight d2. But yeah, it is. It has some aspects of the Evans Gambit, which is super interesting. Basically this bishop b4 is an unusual opening, but it does have aspects of the Evans Gambit, because in the Evans Gambit the b pawn is gone, so b4 can't be played. This is basically like the Evans Gambit if there was no gambit. So if the Evans Gambit plays out equally, this should be a pawn better for white because the b4 pawn is still there. Um, uh, yeah, no, that makes complete sense, Electric. I'm happy to analyze anything, and I honestly I believe that all the games have instructional value. In many cases, yeah, it can be clear where things went wrong tactically, and generally in tactical positions, I can't analyze any better than the camera, or sorry, the engine. But basically the thing about never feel free to, or always feel free to send games in of any kind. But tactical wins I can't add as much value as more strategic games, just because the engine outplays everybody tactically. So the engine will give the best guidance for tactical improvements. Here, b4, bishop b6, b5, knight a5, bishop d3, knight f6, and basically black's equalized here. So my question is, where's the inefficiency, right? b5, knight to a5 is the best line for black. I guess b5 is a little bit committal. b5 is not on the list of moves that that the engine recommends. Basically, I think something like queen b3. But there's many kingside openings like the Rui Lopez or the Italian game where the knight plays to a5 anyways. So the b4 to b5 is not really an improvement. It may overextend these pawns, these types of pawn moves are great post castle and queenside when you can start attacking the king with them. But here I don't think white really sees any improvement by playing b5 from b4. Just leaving the pawn on b4 and starting a more natural developing situation. Bishop e3, knight d2, castles. I think that's probably a better way for white to play this. The engine is recommending castles. So b5, knight a5, bishop d3. Let's see. So b5, bishop a3. Bishop b3? Oh, bishop a3. Yeah, later maybe. But knight to a5. I don't think this is much of an improvement for white's position. Even okay. So the bishop develops to a3, which is interesting, could be valuable. But I feel like d6 shuts that down reasonably quickly. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It feels a little bit overextended to me, but it's interesting. Interesting, Ateratus. I think it's a good question, Ateratus. I think I would say the best route for me in terms of avoiding simple errors has just been to do tons and tons of tactical prep, especially quicker tactical prep like Puzzle Battle, Puzzle Rush. Those seem to make you more deliberate and less likely to hang pieces. There's other games like there's other approaches. Like I think there's one called the Amateur's Mind or the Grandmaster's Mind. I haven't read them, to be honest, but I think that they have kind of listed approaches to maintain focus and make sure that you don't hang pieces. At class level, hanging pieces to 1 or 2 move tactics, many games are decided in this way. So getting those tactical positions and getting those tactical sites to be as strong as possible, I really think that those are your best step forward at class level. Just tons and tons of tactical prep will make you very strong very quickly. I think that's my best approach to that in Terratus. Lots of tactical prep will make you more deliberate. Possibly throw in like an additional time pressure there, so like Puzzle Battle, Puzzle Rush type speed tactics. But I think that's how to avoid these 1 and 2 move tactical misses that that are responsible for so many decisions at class level. But yeah, so bishop b6, b5, and the bishop does get that a3 square and that diagonal. But I don't really like the placement of the bishop on d3 here. This seems not that great. I understand it doesn't hurt the bishop's development if the bishop's due to develop on a3, but I don't know. I think going with more conventional plans here, with like d3, bishop to g5, knight to t2, and castles, This is probably this to me seems like a more reasonable way. I think there's value in the traditional development here. I think this pawn center has the potential to be helpful for white. White secured a big space advantage on the queen side, and I think with normal development, the spatial advantage on the queen side is going to be retained, and then normal development will transpose this into a normal game. With white basically having this one pawn worth spatial advantage. So b5 is an idea, but I don't know. I'm a fan of traditional development on this one. Knight g4 is interesting. I think knight f3 is probably a little bit less complicated. Knight takes e4 here is kind of interesting, but the engine's advocating for knight takes g4, bishop takes knight takes g4, bishop takes g4, bishop takes g4, queen takes g4, and then black I think has f5, which is going to be difficult for white to meet, I think. So here e takes f5, queen e8, and either queen e2, which is probably the best, and the king gets displaced and this pawn gets taken, or the king has to move and really disrupt the the castling position with some issues with the bishop playing bishop f2. This is tricky. This position is more open for white than I think it should be. So when this position basically gets really open for white, I think traditional moves like castles, d4 will end up kind of moving things in the right direction. But yeah, it's really, I mean, this is interesting. Here black is showing a big positional advantage. White allows queen takes f2. This I think is not kind of the right. I think basically allowing this can be problematic for white. Now basically this on the king side black is winning, on the center black is probably winning, and the pieces are a lot looser than they were before. I think allowing queen f2 is not so great. Castles here and white is up slightly. But if the queen to f2, queen takes f2 threat gets missed, this can be a problem. That said, this continues on, and then black basically turns this around. It's a castles, rook takes, rook e8, and now white is white is in relatively good shape. Bishop takes f4, and the mate threat gets missed. So overall, in terms of looking at this game, Cobra, I think basically the pieces that I would focus the most on, I'm not a big fan of b5 here. I think your opponent's played an interesting opening with bishop to b4, which has given the position some. Yeah, no. Sorry, I'm just focused on the game, but yeah, everyone should feel free to speak and share their thoughts. Like I really, it's great to hear from everyone. And I really hope everyone feels encouraged to speak in the chat, because I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say and what your thought processes are on these various things. So I completely agree with Armada Felion here, and yeah, definitely everybody should feel free to speak and share their ideas on positions. We're all learning together here. None of us are Magnus Carlsen or grandmasters. So if it's helpful for your understanding to post anything in the chat. Please do. I'm really happy to hear from everyone and see where everyone's at and how they're thinking about things. It's super helpful. It's super helpful in terms of both, helping me understand where, what people are thinking about in terms of chess, and where, I might be more helpful as a teacher. So, anyways, this b5 I think is an overextension. Black sort of wanted to play knight a5 anyways, so I think keeping it as a relatively normal Italian game type position with d3, bishop g5, knight d2, castles is I think preferable to starting an Evans Gambit development if not necessary. That's my opinion. But overall, this this opening should be fine for white. But bishop to d3 creates some developmental advantages on d2. Anyways, this knight f3 I think was tactically a little bit stronger than knight g4, and I think allowing queen takes f2 here was problematic. I think basically if you don't have to let the queen take f2, once the queen plays f6, castling should be done to prevent this take on f2, here, white ends up getting some pieces back, and then white comes up with an excellent tactical idea, which is to break into the king side, play king takes g6, and checkmate. Awesome. I mean, white did what he needed to do to win, which was awesome. The places I'd revisit are b5 for a fundamental from a fundamental perspective. I'd keep the development relatively normal and not push for black to play knight a5, and then I would definitely try to avoid allowing f2 to be played. So castling here. That said, great chances were made out of a tactically somewhat difficult position, and it's a great win. But looking at this game, I think those are the two things to pay attention to. Watch the pawn on f2. This is white's weakest square. Castling, castling is a way to stop that threat here. And then that b5 move, basically, I think overextending the white queenside pawns at that point in the game are the two moves that I would take a look at. But overall, thank you very much for sending the game, Cobra. Please keep sending them. Very interested in seeing your development in terms of chess. I'd recommend some tactics training. I think everyone benefits from that, including myself. But that's where I put some time in. I think that's your quickest return, tactics training on either chess.com, Chess Battle, or Chess Puzzle Rush, or Puzzle Battle, and chess.com and chesstempo.com is a free alternative as well. Hey, thank you very much for the observe, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the stream. So let's look at let's take this from black's perspective. Amet or Random Carrot sent this game, and it's another game out of the Traxler opening. We've seen the Traxler a good amount on this stream, and just so everybody knows, the Traxler opening goes like this: knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, knight g5, and then the key part that makes it a Traxler line is as opposed to playing d5 here. So if d5 is played, okay, it's this Italian game knight attack. But if bishop to c5 is played, this is the Traxler. This is defined as the Traxler counterattack. Generally, bishop takes is slightly better from an objective perspective than knight takes. But on knight takes, bishop takes f2 is the move. Yes, this is the Aphelion counterattack. We need to know exactly. What's the Aphelion attack move order? Do you know it? Because I want to make that happen. I would like a particular line in the Traxler game to be the Aphelion counterattack. Well, I think you should pick one Aphelion, and then we will make that the Aphelion counterattack. I like that. I like that as an idea, and I definitely think that's a good idea for things to do it. Well, if there's any sidelines or anything in particular you'd like to define, I definitely think naming it the Aphelion counterattack is something that we might have a shot to try to do. So I like that idea a lot. Anyways, this line is the Traxler counterattack. When people talk about the Traxler counterattack, bishop to c5. Here, knight takes f2, bishop takes f2, and king f1 is objectively better than king takes f2. On king takes f2, there's some problems. Knight takes e4, and king g1, queen h4, g3, knight takes g3, knight takes h8, knight d4. And basically, this plays out into a forced draw. So white draws here. There are other less bookish lines here. And I think here, bishop takes f2, king f1, queen e7, knight takes h8, knight takes e4. And I think knight takes e4 is a misstep. I think here queen h5, is a threat. And I think allowing this queen along that diagonal is pretty dangerous. But I just want to play through this game. g6, bishop to f7. I think queen takes f7 is probably black's best alternative here. I'm not sure if that's what was played. King plays to d8, bishop takes, queen f6, and now basically white plays a very bishop to g3 is pretty crazy. White has a big lead. Queen to f2, king to d3, and now I think black's gonna win this game pretty comfortably. The king is very displaced here. So anyways, this is an interesting thing that can happen in the Traxler attack. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c5, and bishop takes f2. Yeah, it's very tactical. To be honest, we've gone over it a good amount of times. I want to just look at this because this is a pretty crazy situation. But overall, this is a situation in which the king makes it to c4 and the king makes it to b3, and white's still showing an 11-point advantage. So that in isolation, I think, is a pretty extreme situation. It's weird to have an 11-point advantage and have black be losing by so much. Look at that. I mean, this is pretty wild. So anyways, I think the main things in terms of the Traxler attack, just since we've gone through it, is ways to sidestep this. So the most intuitive way to sidestep this is d5. d5, e takes d5, knight a5, and white's attack is basically diffused. This is a way to sidestep the potential Traxler attack with bishop c5 and bishop takes f2. This doesn't take as much theory to learn, and it equalizes for black, so realistically, this is probably black's best practical alternative to this knight g5 move order in the Italian. Bishop c5 is where it becomes the Traxler. Knight takes f2, bishop takes f2, king f1, queen e7, knight takes h8, and either bishop knight takes e4 is okay, but bishop to b6 is the preferred move. Sure, yeah. Let's look at the line where where black plays b5 instead of knight a5. Sure, we can do that. Knight c6, knight f6, and then here d5 pawn takes b5. This is pretty interesting. This is another sideline in this aggressive knight attack. Here, the main line is bishop to f1, in which case either knight to d4 or h6, or I think these are fine moves too. Queen takes d5, knight takes d5. But black basically equalizes and has a, or I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised. White gets a pretty positive eval here relative to what I was expecting. Here, knight a5 is the best move. I'm just looking at the eval here. Knight a5 leads to relative equality. I mean, this might be a little better for white, but not by much. So knight a5 I think is a better alternative to b5. So I'm going to propose. With everything in mind, basically this move order in mind, and that move order is e4, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight to g5. I'm going to recommend that black play pawn d5, pawn takes pawn, knight a5. This basically equalizes. It could potentially gambit the pawn with bishop b5, c6, pawn takes. This could be equalizing, and it is kind of a it is somewhat of a gambit for black, but white's pieces are pretty displaced. So that's one line. The line that Electric Horse was interested in looking at, I believe, is Electric Horse. This b5 line. This d5. Okay, so d5, pawn takes d5, b5 is also a book playable alternative. Bishop f1 is the main line. On bishop takes b5, queen takes b5, and then either knight c3, queen takes g2, or queen takes d5, bishop takes c6, queen takes c6. But I think that all of this is worth sidestepping. I'm just going to give you the main suggestion here. d5, pawn takes d5, knight a5, and this is going to lead to a a stable situation in which the chances are roughly equal. So basically, we've looked at they're good. I have good video on demand. I think on the Traxler, and the Traxler is I want to basically cement two things for people who are new here. The Traxler line is knight g5, and my refutation to this is d5, pawn takes d5, knight a5, and black will basically be forced to basically black is basically refuting white's line. This is the best alternative for black. D5, pawn takes d5, knight a5, and now the white, basically no threats are going to be made on f7, and white's going to be misplaced here. This knight's going to have to move from g5 and after h6, and black will hold a developmental edge. So that's that. The other ways of looking at this, but to show the full Traxler line, the full Traxler line is bishop c5, knight takes f2, and then bishop takes f2, and then king takes f1 is best for white. King takes f2 is worse for white, and causes a lot of complexity after knight takes e4. But for anyone new to the stream, basically that is the summary. Refutation, d5, pawn takes d5, knight a5, and the actual legitimate Traxler attack, just so you know what it is bishop c5, knight takes f7, bishop takes f2, and then either king takes f2 or king f1. But either of those is good. So those are the two pieces, and that's why I recommend d5 as being the primary response to knight g5. Anyways, that is a very interesting game, Amet. The actual game is crazy. I want to play through it just because I want to show how crazy it is. Basically, this is a Traxler line accepted where everything moves out, and white moves his king to c4, but is still winning by a lot. And it's a very kind of generally crazy situation that black actually ends up winning with a few tactical, a few tactical imperfections for both sides. But black ends up winning this. Super interesting, super cool. Thank you very much, Random Carrot Amet, for sending it. And yeah, please keep sending them. The Traxler game is crazy. I definitely want to give credit for people brave enough to play that over the board. I'm gonna go with my refuting line: d5, pawn takes d5, knight a5, and sidestep it entirely. But for those who are brave enough to play bishop c5 and then bishop takes f2, very cool stuff and very cool games. So thank you very much for sending that, Amet. I appreciate you sending it, and please keep sending more games. They're super interesting. So let's take a look at this. This game was sent by Interitus, and I just want to check Interitus, since I know that you're here, or were here a minute ago. You were playing white in this game, right? I was pretty sure you were playing white, but I just wanted to confirm, just since I've forgotten what your chess.com screen name is. Either way, the board will play itself, but I just want to make sure that I'm looking at this from the correct perspective. So this is the friend. Okay, so you're playing it as black. All right, cool. Thank you, Interitus. So we'll take it from black's perspective. Thank you for speaking up, and I'll just label it because I have this spreadsheet now where I'm trying to match people's chess.com names to their Twitch names, and Reddit names, and Discord names. So yeah, awesome. All right, so I will write that down, and this game is played from the black perspective. But thank you very much for sending it, Interitus, yeah, let's take a look at this. So you play the French, solid opening. White plays the French advance. I'm not a huge fan of the French advance. I play the mainline French as white. French advance basically, has some characteristics with e5 that can be difficult. The pawn's not basically, in summary, like the French advance is not not really the that helpful a move for white. The pawn is not much better on e5 than it is on e4, if it's better at all. It can be undermined a little bit more easily with f6. And when I look at the French and I look at French theory, I always think of Reuben Fine's. Yeah, the pawn is potentially overextended at e5. That I think is the correct summary, Tarash. And with the pawn overextended on e5, this d4 e5 structure becomes more attackable. There's basically a really good theoretical write-up of the French in very broad terms in Reuben Fine's ideas behind the chess openings. But basically, in this book, they do an analysis of pawn structures where they're looking at the value of, black relative to white in the French game, and basically, what the important characteristic is, if white can maintain this d4 e5 structure for the whole game, white is very likely to win that game and very likely to have favorable play the whole way and get much better chances. If black can succeed in undermining the d4 e5 structure, then white is either equal or worse. So basically, black is trying to disrupt d4 e5. That's a big aspect of the French game, and white is trying to maintain d4 e5. So basically, all of the moves that black plays, c5, f6, knight c6, all the moves that can potentially undermine this structure are to achieve this goal of disrupting the d4 e5 structure. If he succeeds, then he's equal or better, and basically the fight in the French is over that white pawn structure. So here, this all looks good. These are main lines. Pawn takes. By the way, knight can't take here because this bishop to b5 discovery is pretty dangerous. Let's see. I just want to take a look at your question, J Black and Electric Horse. Yeah, no, it's true, J Black, for sure. F6 does make the e6 pawn backwards and vulnerable. But your main concern in the French as white is to maintain this d4 e5 structure, and then sort of, in addition to that, generate a kingside attack. And Electric Horse, black wants to trade off dark squared bishop. Sorry, I just want to look at. Oh, sorry, that's a different thing. But yeah, I want to think about J Black's comment. Yeah, with f6, the goal of f6 is to undermine e5 and trade off the e5 pawn for the f pawn. That does make the e6 pawn weak, but I feel strongly in the general principle. Allowing this, allowing basically the e5 d4 structure to continue is good for white, and allowing it to continue is bad for black. So f6 is played as an idea of a way to disrupt the structure, either with exchanging the f pawn for the d pawn after d takes e5, or just taking the e pawn. Both of those situations are good for black, so that's why f6 is played. But it does make the e6 pawn weak and more attackable, either with like a rook on e1 or a knight on g5. Both of those moves become more likely after e6. Threats on, or after f6, threats on e6 I'm referring to. Yeah. So anyways here, black's looking reasonably good. This is good development. He's lost his opportunity to undermine with c5 because he's traded the c5 pawn for the c3 pawn. But overall, I think black's chances of disrupting the center are reasonably good. Knight b4 can be played, putting a ton of pressure on the c2 bishop. Rook c8 is good. Basically controlling the c file. Basically in exchange for losing his undermining chances with the c pawn, black has secured control of the c file, and that I think is really a good plus for black. This will play out well. The engine is showing equality, but basically this position is open enough and black's development is natural enough that I think black has pretty good positions here. Knight e7 is interesting. I think basically, the engine doesn't like it because the engine prefers knight to b4 and rook c8 immediately. That's sort of what the engine is proposing here. I think that's probably objectively the best plan. Knight e7 also makes sense though. I don't think there's anything that white can do to immediately undermine knight e7. And I think the knight plays to like g6, bishop b7. Basically knight plays to g6, bishop plays to e7, kingside castling, or potentially knight to e7, then knight to e7 castles, knight to b4, and then after trading this this queenside knight for the bishop, playing knight to f5, that could work, or castles g6 and then knight to f5 on the next move, and then retake with the g pawn. Could be interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think generally, I think it basically depends on the pawn structure. I think that g takes. Let's see if the engine agrees with me. But at least my understanding of this: knight f5, bishop takes f5, g takes f5, and I think what black may have attacking chances here. This is interesting. I think this could potentially be good for black. Black has also traded off his bishop pair in this case. So I think in this particular case, knight f5 might be playable. Maybe not the best, but playable. Knight c3, knight f5. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I think it depends on basically how good your attacking chances are going to be on the king side. White doesn't want to get rid of his light squared bishop. I agree with that. And basically, if White can get the bishop pair off the board, he's going to be heading towards a favorable endgame in an opening position. The position's still somewhat closed, but it's rapidly going to open. So that's why I would say trading off the knight on f5 for the bishop is okay here. The knights are disproportionately strong in the French, but this is already starting to basically liquidate, basically. So the bishops are going to get relatively more and more valuable. So I think at the end of the day, playing knight f5 and trading for the bishop on c2 is okay. I would rather trade this knight for the bishop on c2 than get the knight posted on f5. I think that's probably a better strategy. But I think either way, trading off the light squared bishop for a knight is fine for black. Not a problem for black. But clearing off this d4 pawn, I think, is going to be a big point in this game. If black can clear off this d4 pawn somehow, it's going to be a win, I think. If bishop e3 instead of trading away the light squared bishop happens, interesting question. Yeah, so bishop d3, bishop e3 here. G6, bishop e3. Is black taking on queen takes b2 too risky? No, I don't think so. I think you can do it. There are like poisoned pawn types of structures, and yeah, let's look at knight f5 line. Here, knight f5, bishop b3, queen takes b2. No, I think this is fine. I think basically no, I think the French, the French is playable. The French is definitely solid. It basically leads to a lot of pressure on the e4 pawn, and generally leads to e5 being played. So the French defense is not a refuted opening by any means. I don't think that's. I think that's not. I think French is very playable, and certainly at club level, I think it's playable. I've never heard anyone really refer to the French as being, bad or losing. You have to like the positions. You have to like the positions that you're getting out of the French, but you're still in a pretty good place with the French. You're still in a pretty good place as black playing the French game. But you have to like these kind of closed positions with valuable knights. At least in the opening. So it's interesting. But the poison pawn line, yeah. This is not the winner though. So here the pawn is not nearly as bad to take as it is in some cases. So say knight f5, bishop e3, queen takes b2. I mean, this isn't a perfect. This isn't the most realistic move order, but Queen takes b2 here is fine. No real problems for black on queen takes b2. Queen takes b2 gets to be a problem if the rook can quickly play to b1 and take the b7 pawn. That just isn't the case here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the stream, Electric Horse. Feel free to send over more games, and thank you for joining in and being here. So queen takes b2, and I think basically black is fine. This position looks about equal. Pressure exerted on c2 is good. Knight b4 is a good move played by black. Bishop to a4, bishop takes, knight c6. And here black's winning. So the pressure on how is white going to maintain this d4 pawn, either rook e1 or bishop e3, but neither of those is really ideal. The rook feels sort of misallocated there, and the bishop can get traded for can be traded for the knight on e3. Knight takes e3 if the bishop's on e3 probably isn't worth it. In this case, trading the f5 knight for white's dark squared bishop is probably not the best trade. It's better to so if bishop e3 gets played here, just leave it there. This structure is not particularly good for white, and I think basically here you're in a pretty good, basically that the bishop is executing the functions of a pawn here, basically. So just leave it. Don't trade it for the knight. There's no reason to. But black's basically better. G4 is a little bit unusual and probably undermines the king and king safety. Bishop takes h6, doubles the pawn, but the king side is wide open. Black's gonna really cement an attack on the king side here. Another thing is this f6 pawn effectively undermined the d4 e5 structure. It's late in the opening, or it's in the middle game, so that d4 e5 structure matters relatively less. But black's assembling a big attack here, and ultimately I assume win. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, so here's an improvement. Basically this is just a tactical error. E5 here is completely fine for black, and this position holds, the defense holds, and black is up a good amount of material. So E5 and black has no problems. But unfortunately, black plays queen f6, which swings the game to a mate and 2 for white. This is just an attention error, Enteritus. The thing is, this is okay. So this is a 2-move tactic, right? It really does happen. It happens to all of us. Yeah, no. I mean, I think that's completely, that's completely understandable. These types of errors happen to everybody. E5 and black is fine, likely about to win here, or relatively close to winning here. Like moves like queen f3 are going to be good if the queen moves off the third rank. And there's tactics involving like queen h5, or like rook takes h2, queen h5 tactics. King g3, rook to f3. I mean, is a potential tactic that I'm seeing. This is just an attention error. It's a missed 2-move tactic that I think with more time you would see. So what I would think here is basically I would try to make sure that you're doing enough tactics training. This is my advice in a lot of situations at class level. It's just it's one of these things. It's like alertness. It's just an error with alertness. Yes, and that is the perfect mode Aphelion. The tactics with sunglasses. So Enteritus, I think it's kind of a bummer because you played a good game and you're heading into the late middle game, early end game with a 2-pawn advantage. This is a game you should win, I think. So it's very frustrating, and I've been in the situation myself at many points where you're about to win and you make a small tactical error and the game shifts. It definitely makes sense to me. It's happened to all of us. But in terms of advice, the best solution that I found for this type of thing is just to do tons and tons of tactical training. They make you, tactical training, especially faster tactical training, does make you more careful, and it makes you much more likely to see these types of two-move tactics. If these two-move tactics are on your radar as things that can happen, and your focus is good, and you're expecting this type of thing to be possible, I think you will miss many fewer of these types of opportunities. I understand your situation, and it's just very frustrating. E5 here, and black is completely fine, likely to win. But instead queen f6, and black gets mated. That's that's a rough way to lose, to be honest. But it does happen to all of us from time to time. And my best solution for this is to do total overkill on the tactics training. Make sure you're never missing a mate in two, and I think that will also make you more careful. There are other approaches, like, there are books on focusing in chess games that might give you kind of a good framework for coming up with ways to focus yourself so that you're checking after every move, that you're not hanging things. But I guess I would say, definitely, be very deliberate in your moves, especially if you have the time to be deliberate in your moves. But more importantly, make sure that you're never missing two-move tactics by making your ability to see two-move tactics as good as it can possibly be. That's my advice on that one. But yeah, in Teradus, I know your situation here. This happens to everyone, and it has happened to me. So yeah, no, it's disappointing. So that's the most obvious improvement, right, in this game. In terms of other improvements for black, I think basically things to look at. I think the opening was played pretty well. Knight to e7 is kind of interesting. So knight to e7 basically slows development. I think either it's counterintuitive to play knight to b4, but I think making this early threat to trade this knight for this very, basically very powerful, focused on the h7 bishop for white, white's white squared bishop, which is often pretty strong in the French, this is a rare case where it's probably good to move the same piece twice in an opening. Knight a7 makes sense from a fundamental perspective, which is why I feel difficult. It's kind of a difficult situation because developing your pieces is always good in the opening, but in this particular case, coming up with this quick way to trade your knight for white's strongest bishop in the French is an exception to develop all of your pieces as quickly as possible. It's knight b4 is objectively an improvement, but it's not a fundamentally it's not a fundamental move, which is why I feel less strongly about it. You played a fundamentally correct move. Knight e7 develops the knight, but basically knight b4 happens to be an improvement in this case. Otherwise, I think this was all pretty solid. White opens his kingside kind of unnecessarily. I think there's an inefficiency here. Bishop takes g3. Better rook to h6. This knight is pinned basically. It can't move. So yeah, rook h6, rook a d1. And here, I think black is just better. It's kind of a complicated position. Black probably wants to trade off the material. Black is attacking, so black generally wants to trade off material in positions where he's winning materially. Here it's a little bit less clear because these pieces are helpful in black's attack. On some random knight moves, like say knight to e2 here. Black is able to play rook takes f3, queen takes f3, rook takes h2. So that's a tactic to just keep in mind. But I think, in general, black played this pretty well. It's disappointing to end up losing a game in this way. Not a whole ton of, huge improvements here. Knight b4, for reasons that are tactical and not fundamental, was an improvement over knight e7. But knight b4 was played the next move anyways, and was good on the next move anyways. You trade off black's bad bishop for white's good bishop, so that's a good outcome. And you successfully exert pressure on the d4 pawn. But the most impactful move of this game, unfortunately, was this endgame, and here, I think the best thing that I can do is just point towards tactics training. You want to make sure you see every possible mate in two, and that will help you look at queen f6, queen takes f6, rook takes f6, rook to g8. If you've seen this exact puzzle, or puzzles extremely similar to it in the tactics trainer many times, you're less likely to miss it when your opponent has that opportunity. That's my advice on that topic. Tactics training is just extremely important. I can't help you much with it. I think it's just something that you sort of have to do, on your own. But if you do it, then I think you will improve quickly, and this position, which turned out as a loss, turns into a win for you. And turning losses into wins makes a big difference in your overall rating and strength. In this situation, black's winning. I mean, the eval is -2. Black's played a good game, did a lot of fundamental things right, but with a missed mate in two, the whole game basically gets decided. So. Bummer, Interitus. Thank you for sending this game. I thought it was a really well played game up until this final error. Stick with the tactics so that you see possibilities like queen f6, queen takes f6, and rook g8. It's tough. No, it's rough. It's rough to lose a game in this way, but I think you overall played it very strongly, and with tactics training, you'll get the win that I think you deserved out of this one. So thank you very much for sending that, Interitus, and please keep sending them in the future. But tactics training is the advice I can give you. You deserve to win this game. You outplayed your opponent for 99% of it, and just on that last part ran into some issues. But thank you very much, Interitus, and please keep sending games my way. I really appreciate you joining the stream and you sending games. It's super helpful and makes the stream that much better. So thanks for being here. All right, next game. So this one is a little bit different. This was a request that I got on Reddit to take a look at the Chebanenko Slav. So this is an interesting line. I've played the Slav in my life, but I have not played the Chebanenko Slav. So let's take a look. At that. It is very interesting. D4, D5, C4, C6. Knight f3, knight f6, knight c3. Okay, so very normal Slav defense, right? Nothing, particularly, surprising about this. But what makes it what makes it the Chebanenko Slav, or I think they call it the chameleon variation, but Chebanenko Slav, is a6. I've definitely seen it. I've seen it. I've played the white side of this a few times and seen a6. But there's a number of different choices here. The most interesting, I think, actually, is the second most popular option, c5. With c5, basically white restricts black's position here. This c5, and black has a spatial disadvantage. It is risking overextension, but it's really taking away squares from this black bishop. What should this black bishop do? It's not, incredibly clear to me, right? I guess probably, move to g7, and then run into white's d4 pawn. But overall, it's pretty tricky. It's a tough decision, and will require some type of unusual maneuvering by black, I think. So anyways, this is the second most popular line. Other lines for white, and I'll just play the top four. E3, C5, number 2, A4, which counters B5 and works out somewhat symmetrically to the A6 pawn. And C takes D5. C takes D5 I like probably the least of these, but I think basically I don't know. It just simplifies the position more than white needs to. Um, Also, white is basically playing a closed game, so or white has tried to play a closed game, so opening the position up like this is not what I think white most thematically wants. Then bishop f4. Um, this exchange Slav is interesting with with a6 mixed in. The analysis looks good. It looks like white never lost the initiative, but thematically it's a little bit different than the others. The move that I think is the most interesting and the one that I want to spend the most time on in this analysis is c5. C5 is really interesting. It's the eval is much better than the exchange line that we were looking at. So I take that first, and it has specific characteristics that make it difficult to undermine. Moves like b6, I'm curious about, but I don't know if they can be used to successfully undermine the center here. So my intuitive play is b6, b4, a5, and then a3 can't be played because b takes b4 and then takes b4 and then rook takes a1. But here queen a4, and then knight e4, and then bishop to b2. This is interesting. This basically, this queen a4 move, as opposed to a3, makes it so that black's pawn is pinned, as opposed to white's a pawn being pinned. Because here, pawn takes and then the pins on the rook on a1. But queen a4 makes it so that the pins on the pawn on a5, so that's interesting, and it allows white to maintain this this very dominant pawn structure. Interesting. So if we go through this, a6, c5, knight d7, bishop f4, knight h4, and either bishop to g3 is possible, or maybe bishop to d2. There's a few different options here. I guess the most popular is bishop to d2, like the immediate retreat. But basically, now the queen and the rook are connected. So b4 is much more of a threat with bishop f4 having been played. Here, knight d7, bishop f4, and b4 can be played on the next move. And then, as unlike before, if a5 gets played, a3 can be comfortably played, because if the pawn takes b4, rook takes a1, queen takes a1. And basically white's got this very controlling space advantage on the queen side. Overall, very good for white. So it's a big spatial advantage for white is the main point here. Bn d7, bishop f4, knight h5, bishop d2, knight f6. I mean, so that basically wasted that move. White basically moved, in the past two moves, white moved bishop f4, knight a5, bishop d2, knight f6. So basically the white bishop got to freely develop to bishop d2 here. And now b4 can be played. And this, I think, is good for white. This structure is really, it's advanced, so it needs to be monitored a little bit more carefully than closer pawns. Here, white's got a big dominant control of the center, and black sees this and is forced to develop his bishop to g7. Overall, here, good place for white to be in, to be honest. Let's look at bishop f5 instead. So here, the move was c5 and bishop f5, which is the second most popular move. Also a good move. Here I play b4, bishop f4, and then on knight h5, bishop to d2, and b4 with the same kind of playable. So if knight f6, then b4, with the same kind of playable strength on the queen side, and with the playable a3 move. Otherwise, bishop f5 and bishop f4 and bn d7, and then e3. And here I think white's just pretty good. It's a solid position. White has a big spatial advantage and control of the queen side. a3, b4 can be comfortably played, and white will develop his bishop either probably to bishop e2. I would say bishop to d3, but That trade and the taking of the queen off of the first rank is a little bit risky. So I'd probably say bishop to e2 here, and then castle kingside. And it looks like a strong, basically a strong queenside for white, that he might push on later with a4 and b5. But that big spatial advantage, I think, is really going to help white win this game. And the king side will stay locked up, and black is not going to be able to effectively create any attacks on the castled white king. But here, knight d7, e3, e6, bishop e2, bishop e7, and white's choosing between knight d2 or castles here. Looks like black should play for e5. Yes, I agree with that. I think black should play for e5, but it's very difficult for black to play for e5 here. No, I think you're right. I think that would be a great break. Black's almost lost any ability to break white's pawn control here. The break that I was looking at actually was b6, b4, but I mean that's pretty difficult. I mean the pawns are kind of aligned in this in this general direction. So black doesn't really have many ways to attack them very effectively. E5 is, black is very restricted space-wise. So you're right in that black needs a break. Similar into, the same way that the modern or the Pyrrhic or the King's Indian defense requires a break as black. Yeah, no, it is sort of the London with the bishop on f4. It's interesting. It does have London system characteristics with the bishops on f4 and f5. But yeah. So should black play for? Black needs to play for a break. E5. I don't know if that's a possible one. E5 basically. How white has multiple attackers on e5. So this pawn, this bishop, this knight are all focused on e5. So if e5 gets played now, so say e3. E5, I mean, white takes it very comfortably, right? But here, it's white is just fine. So in order to set up e5, what black's really going to have to, if it's possible at all, black's really going to have to get creative. E6, bishop e7, knight, yeah, or f6 even, maybe. Yeah, I mean, black could possibly, it's not impossible, but something like this, knight takes, bishop takes, and then like bishop e2, f6, bishop takes, your castles, bishop takes, e5. I mean, that's how I would, that's an idea for how one might be able to do it. But yeah. It's sort of a needed thing, a break here. Otherwise, white's just looking pretty good. But yeah. So either J Black's idea with the bishop f6 supporting it, or f6, I think are tries. But black has to spend a lot of time to do that. Still, it might be the best idea, but it's going to be very time consuming. So as a result, I really do think white's position is pretty solid here. I don't know how black's going to be able to disrupt this queen structure. So the best break for black might be in the middle. Tricky. Anyways, those are sort of my thoughts on it. Let's just go through this main line again. So I'm going to advise c5. I think c5, is if you can be careful in terms of not undermining your own. Not undermining your own pawn structure here as white. I think c5 is pretty solid. So say knight d7, bishop f4, knight h5, bishop d2, knight hf6, and then b4. This is great for white. This spatial advantage is not easily undermined. You're gonna have to you're gonna have to count out pretty well a3 and make sure that the queen defends the bishop. But overall here, this is a very playable opening for white, and one that I think plays out reasonably intuitively. The only thing I would suggest on this bishop f4 move is bishop g3 is playable, but I wouldn't advise for it. I would play bishop to d2. This knight is displaced on knight h5 so much to the point basically where HNF6 is one of the preferred lines. So here, e3, and white can sort of comfortably develop, and black will struggle to find a way to come up with like an e5 break. Yeah, let's see. Is it possible to do e5? Interesting. So that's here, with the knight still on h5. So yeah, so let's look. E5 is in this opening book, and on it, knight takes, pawn takes, and then basically the preferred move is queen c7. Let's look at the opening theory here. So it's either queen e7, queen c7, which is the engine line, or bishop takes c5. In terms of what looks the most intuitive here, yeah, the knight is definitely displaced. There's no doubt about that. But say queen e7, e4, queen takes, bishop e2, knight f6, e takes, bishop takes, and here, yeah, no, the knight is displaced. I mean, for sure. But how does white really exploit it? I'm thinking after queen e7, I like almost b4 here. I wonder if that's playable. I'm wondering if that's playable. Holding the c5, because I like having this this basically spatial advantage on the queen side enough that on queen e7, b4 is fine. But I don't know. Knight takes, takes, queen c7, or queen e7. On queen e7, main opening line, e4. But bishop e3 I think is interesting. Queen takes, bishop d4. I mean, overall, basically, black's going to have to play chess, and both sides are going to have to play chess, and it's this pawn structure is advantageous for white. The bishop is getting sort of misused. I mean, generally using the bishop on a closed diagonal like this, like a pawn, is not making full use of the bishop's ability. But it is on the fianchetto, so this is pretty much okay. So I just want to go through that. The question was e5 is e5 playable in this move 7 with the knight on h5? Here, knight takes, pawn takes, queen to e7, bishop to e3, queen takes e4, bishop to d4. Yeah, no, of course, Metaray. No, thank you very much for the idea, and that game is definitely playable. Looks about equal. White's actually still a little bit better even. But yeah, that particular e5 move, the key move for white against e5 is knight takes as opposed to pawn takes. Let's just look at pawn takes. Pawn takes eval, knight takes c5, and then this pawn structures. This e5 pawn is weak and only held by the knight. So yeah, here I guess I would say yeah, white's in a pretty good place. Nothing too exciting, and really just kind of a playable game exiting the opening. But e5 is an interesting idea for sure. So knight h5, bishop d2, e5, and then the key move knight takes, pawn takes, queen e7, bishop e3, queen takes d4, bishop d4. Yeah, so that's an interesting line. I mean, I guess I would say basically, I don't know. I mean, white's better, so this is a fine line for white. But anyways, the most so having taken a look at this and prepped a little bit for this, I think the best line for white is this c5 move against this Chebanenko chameleon opening for black. c5 here, and white's in a good place. Knight d7, bishop g5, h6, bishop f4. Black's queen side is very restricted, and a high priority for white is developing this bishop as well. Bishop f4, and b4 becomes much playable, and white may be able to make permanent this this spatial advantage on the queen side. That's what I would say. But a very interesting opening. I'm glad we got to play through a few lines. Still, much more study to be done. All of these I'm happy to look at again, or to look at different lines in them. But I really appreciate the suggestion from Reddit and the advice to take a look at this opening. Got to learn a lot more about the intricacies of A6. Basically, just in general, A6 in the Queen's Gambit, and C5 controls things for white pretty comfortably. This leads to a lot of good lines where white has a spatial advantage on the queen side. A6 is probably on the passive side, but at the end of the day, this is a game, and black can also play this. This is playable for both sides, but I recommend 5c5 on a6 on 4a6. Interesting opening, an interesting idea to take a look at that one. All right, the next one's also from Reddit. This is Velas6. Thank you very much for sending the game. I'm really happy to have you on the stream, and yeah, please keep sending games. And I hope we can get a good look at this game. Thank you very much for sending it in for analysis. Let's take a look at this. All right. So Velas is playing white, but yeah, let's see what happens. So it's an early London system against knight f6. Or I guess London system comes with c4 first. I associate bishop f4 with the London system. Yeah, no worries, MetaRay. No, thank you very much for being here, and yeah, please keep sending games. I'm really happy to have you join the stream. So yeah, hopefully this can be helpful. But d4, knight f6, and then bishop f4, could transpose into. So here it transposes into the London, right? But bishop f4, I call the London move. I guess it's technically still the Indian game without c4, but whatever. Okay. There's a few different choices here for white. Basically here, e3 is what's played. E3 is a main line, completely fine. Knight f3 is an alternative. Knight c3 is also an alternative. Knight f, for the reasons of you usually need the c4 pawn to challenge the d5 pawn in queen's pawn games. The moves here that I would be looking at are e3 and knight f3. E3 is played, cool. And then the most aggressive response for black is c5. Here, knight f3 is playable and c3 is playable. C3 sort of transforms it into a semi-Slav with colors reversed, sort of. I mean, the bishop's on the other side of the pawn chain, but this type of d4, or this could be c4 d4 instead of c5 d5 against this structure here. But I think basically here, it's pretty solid, I guess. I have no real objections to this somewhat less challenging opening. It's conservative, I guess, but fine. So here, this is well-explored opening theory. The main line here is bishop to g3, bn d2, yeah, bishop takes d6 is okay. I wouldn't play bishop to d6. That brings the queen forward with momentum, but still playable and definitely within the opening book. What white plays is fine too, I think. I guess we can look at the eval, but it's fine. It's not the main line, but it makes sense. The situation that white, I think, does do, what white does want to avoid is this. This pawn structure is not particularly strong for white. This leaves like a big weakness on e4, and it also leaves an inability to match black in the center. Black is doing better in the center in this situation, largely because all the attacks that white have, all the strength that white has on e5, which he does have, is sort of redundant. He doesn't need two pawns to support a knight push to e5. So basically here, I think white's in, white is correct in avoiding bishop takes f4 and then pawn takes f4. Bishop g5 here, and black has a few different options. Black plays bn d7. We're still well within the opening book. The opening book suggests bishop to e7, c4, castles, knight c3, and now we're actually in a pretty standard-looking Queen's Gambit decline. This is a very recognizable Queen's Gambit decline type situation. So black plays something somewhat unusual here by bn d7. The normal move here is on bishop g5, play bishop e7. And then you're in very deeply booked Indian game Queen's I guess not Queen's Gambit decline till c4, then Queen's Gambit decline theory. But here bn d7, a little bit different structure than normal. The bishop's feels a little bit displaced on d6 without facing the other bishop, but mainly okay. I like c4. C4. So far as white, white has played one move that I thought was unusual, but otherwise has pretty much played this how I would play it. Bishop to g5 was an interesting idea, and it played out well because black didn't respond bishop to e7. But to this point, that's the only move where I think that white played something somewhat unorthodox. But c4 I think is great. I think now you're really transposing it into kind of relatively favorable Queen's Gambit decline. c6, okay. Now we're like, I don't know. They all sort of transpose into each other, but sort of semi-Slav type position. The bishop's a little weird on d6 now. It has no defense, but white can't really approach it, so whatever. Knight c3, castles, bishop d3, bishop takes. Okay, yeah. I think white's just a little, white's basically still has the initiative. Black hasn't equalized. Yeah, both sides can just sort of play in a fundamental way from here. Bishop takes, queen takes, e4, bishop d3, e5. Yeah, looks pretty solid. Okay. So here's the first move that the engine has a problem with. So I think bishop to c2 here, holding this e4 pawn is probably better. I think I understand bishop to. Yeah, no, I mean e5 is interesting. It does make me wonder if you can, basically like trade off here, like queen takes, f4. And then either like queen d4, king h1 or something. I don't know. I do wonder if like there's a way to expand, trade it off and then expand with f4 that might give you good attacking chances. But here, d5 is just fine. I bet d5 is objectively better than the exchange. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and then f4. And white is starting to expand and might have attacking chances. I'm not sure though. It's sort of tough to decide. But yeah, interesting. D5, knight c5, and then either bishop to c2 or bishop to c2 over bishop to e2. I get bishop to e2 though. Bishop to e2 makes sense, right? I mean, this knight would be annoying on c4. So here, knight goes to c4, and basically the knight could potentially get posted here. Moves like b5 potentially, but I don't know exactly. Queen e2, knight d6, a3, b4 or something. Yeah, no. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense to me, Metaray. I think the logic behind not playing bishop e2 has to do with maintaining this diagonal. Like on bishop e2, this c4 pawn is defended, which is good. But if pawn takes, this bishop doesn't really have the same value along this diagonal that it otherwise would. And actually, d4 becomes playable, although probably not the best. Here you're probably supposed to play like rook d8 as white or as black. But here I think it's pretty it's an interesting position, but I think black is equalized. White was winning, so let's let's see if there's a move order that maintains white's advantage here. Because this is pretty good shape. c takes d5 is not that good. Rook takes d8 is not that. Rook to d8 is not that good. Knight to c5, and bishop to c2, and the e4 pawn is well held. This diagonal is still intact. I think partially because I'm thinking of why the eval favors bishop c2 so strongly over bishop to e2. I think what it's basically saying is that knight c4 is not actually that terrible. Knight c4 moves here, and b3 gets played, and then the knight doesn't really do anything after that. It either goes to knight a3, in which case it's spending a lot of time, trading for this bishop, which is not actually even that great because it's behind this d4 pawn, or this e4 pawn. I think it's saying that that basically it's better to maintain the later mobility. This diagonal, this a6 diagonal for the bishop is not super valuable. The only argument to be made for holding that diagonal with the bishop is to keep the knight off of c4. But keeping the knight off of c4 isn't actually that big a deal. b3 or knight a3, and that's sort of the end of that. So that I think is the logic behind moving the bishop to c2 instead of e2. It's just that this diagonal held by e2 to a6 by the light squared bishop is not actually that strong. Knight c4, b3, and the threat kind of ends. I mean, the knight can trade off for this good squared bishop, but it spent a lot of moves doing that. Is the point. Yeah, no. I hope this is helpful. End of the circle. I really yeah, no. I hope this is helpful, and I really appreciate having you here. Definitely feel free to send me more games. Send me some more material to look at. The more material sent to me, the better. To be honest, I'm looking over 12 games or so a day, so that means that 12 games at least need to get sent to me. So everybody, feel free to send me as much stuff as you want, and we'll make it part of the stream. There's lots of interesting games and lots of interesting instructional stuff to go over. I also learn a lot of stuff in terms of the openings. When you've been playing the same openings over and over, you kind of get stuck. Good question. I actually have a Discord, which is probably the best way to send me things. I have a Discord that has like a game submission section, yeah, feel free to post them on here. I think this is the best, or Jen's got it. And just in case anyone's new, Jen is my girlfriend. She's awesome and super supportive and helpful of the stream. She drew the tactics emote, which I love, and awesome. And yeah, please, more people the better. Like, my goal here is really just, I think that chess lessons should be free and available to everyone, regardless of other situations. We have the technology now to make chess lessons completely free at a pretty high level. So that's what I'm hoping to do here. So please, as much material as possible, and whatever you're the most interested in from a learning perspective. I'm super happy to do either your games or general concepts, whatever you're interested in and whatever works. But yeah, I think this is I'm really happy to be doing this stream, and I'm hoping it's helpful. So anyways, this knight on c2, this bishop on c2 versus e2. It's because this diagonal is not that valuable, and knight c4 is not as damaging as it first looks. Jen's the best. That's a tough question. I think, I don't know. I mean, it's one of these things. All I know is that the most people can be helped if chess lessons are completely free at all levels. It's a really good question, Poundrow. But at the end of the day, all I know is that the most social good is done if chess lessons can be available to everyone regardless of financial situation. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the case right now. I think there's a lot of people who, spend money that they might be allocating somewhere else on chess lessons, and I just don't think that's necessary or helpful. So I guess that's my opinion on that, Poundrow. I think I'm not capable of doing highest level coaching, but I am a USCF master, and I do believe that the most good is done for the world and the most good is done for the game. If chess lessons are completely free to everyone, that includes people in developing countries, that that includes people who really just don't have money for lessons. Chess lessons can absolutely be free. They can absolutely be free at a high quality, and that is what my goal is to do here. So it's a very tough question, Poundrow, but I know that the best thing for the world, I strongly believe that the best thing for the world is to do what modern technology allows us to do, and to make chess lessons free to everyone, so that everyone has a good chance of improving and everyone has a good chance of being a great chess player regardless of financial situation. That's my opinion on that topic, Poundrow. It's a tough question, but modern technology allows us to give free lessons to everyone regardless of who you are, and that's what I'm trying to do here. So it's a good question. It's a good question, Poundrow, but I think that's the solution. I want everyone to have a chance to become a grandmaster or a master or whatever their chess goals are, and I know that we can do it with what we have available. And I'm very happy to have an opportunity to work in that arena. But anyways, that's my thinking on that. Very good question, Poundrow. Thank you for asking it. So continuing on this, the c4 knight, or the c4 the c4 square is not as valuable as it first appears for the knight. So bishop to c2 I think is the better move, because this diagonal is not much worse and this diagonal is better. So that's the that's my idea for an improvement there. Queen e2, knight to d6. And an h3, knight d2, all playable moves. But let's just go back to what actually happened in the game. Bishop to e2. b4, knight e6. Queen b3, knight to d4, knight takes, pawn takes. Knight to a4. And black, unfortunately, is winning here. This is, basically this shifted a bit. Thank you guys very much for the thank you, Jen, for the update. But yeah, b4, knight e6, queen b3, knight to d4, knight pawn takes d4, and here this thing has basically the eval has shifted, and the eval shifted here with bishop to e2. I mean, it basically was close to equal, and then after bishop to e2, this becomes more favorable to black. b4, knight e6, queen b3. Knight e6 was a good idea. Yeah, we'll see what happens. This is interesting. It's a very complicated game. I mean, it's a chess game basically. Knight d4 will be a good outpost for the knight. So knight d4, knight takes d4 can't be played because pawn takes, and then the knight has to move, and then queen takes e4. So that's a problem. This knight to d4, knight takes, pawn takes, knight to a4, queen takes, and c takes d5, e5, and yeah, we're in an interesting situation. This is somewhat better for black, but I really want to check to see where there was a sidestep here. Knight e6 was a good move. It exploits this pin on the queen. So I guess maybe because of knight e6, maybe b4 is not the best use of white's time. So either queen c1 or queen d2, and maybe potentially followed by queen to e3. I think that might be a better strategy for white. Tricky. This is interesting. So yeah, queen to c1, c takes d5, pawn takes d5, e4, queen g5, and yeah, interesting. Knight takes d5, I guess, is the main line, but this gets very tactically complicated. Will you lose the pawn if the queen moves on d5? Yeah, let's check. So let's look at the preferred engine move, queen c1. Here, pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5, Knight takes d5, knight takes d5, rook takes. And then in the most literal way, I think the answer is no, right? Because bishop c4, and then rook plays to d8, and then I think I was thinking bishop takes f7, but you're right. The king can take f7. So this yeah, this is interesting. So the queen moves to c1. Okay, pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes, bishop c4, rook to d8, and you know, have you just lost a pawn as white, or as white? Yeah. So queen e3, and then bishop e6 is suggested. Okay, so this line clearly gives back the pawn, right? You know, the e5 pawn is traded. The other line, so here, knight takes, rook takes, bishop c4, rook d8, queen e3. So basically the key move in this combination where you're trading off the d5 is queen e3, and you know, it's basically queen e3, and you have pressure on this e5 pawn and the c5 knight. Most directly on the c5 pawn. I mean, you're threatening to take the e5 pawn the next move. So here, bishop e6, and actually even queen takes e5 is playable, right? So you get that pawn back. The answer is you do end up losing the d5 pawn, but you end up getting back the e5 pawn with your queen. So you don't actually, because of this tactic, you don't actually fully lose the queen completely. Queen c1, pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes, bishop b4, rook d8, queen e3, and the pawn can't successfully be yeah, no, for sure. You know, and I would really have to look at this position, and the only reason that I'm able to find that tactical response so quickly is because you know, I have the engine in front of me. But I'm wondering in a slow game, you know, if you could plausibly count this out. I think you probably could. So like queen c1, and then yes, you are giving this up. But at the end of this trade, bishop c4 is forced, or bishop c4 is forcing to the rook to move. And then queen to e3 becomes the next available move, and pressure on e5. I think that's the improvement. Also, f6 can't be played to defend the e5 pawn, so it's just that much more lost. Queen c1, pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes, queen bishop c4, rook d8, queen e3. And I'm wondering if knight d7 is at all playable, because that literally does hold on to the pawn, but then you just play rook a d1 and pressure on the rook. But yeah, I mean, it's that's a very tactically complicated way to hold on to, or to trade off that pawn for the e5 pawn. But the answer is yes, you get the e5 pawn for the d5 pawn, but you do lose the d5 pawn. Yeah, no, it is super complicated, right? I'm wondering if, like, you know, without seeing that line, if there's a better way. You know, there's also the option queen to d2. Really here as white, you're just sort of trying to advance the pieces. So c takes d5, e takes d5, e4, queen g5, you know, either knight takes d5 here, in which case, like, knight takes, queen takes, knight takes, rook takes, and then one of the rooks pins this rook on d1, being the key tactic here. But it's really interesting. It's really interesting, meta ray. This. I mean, you know, black is better here, but it's a tactically complicated game. I mean, you basically have to play chess here, and it's going to come down to the tactical ability of white to hold on to as much as possible, and black's ability to try to win material here by liquidating the center. But that engine-assisted line, I think, is the best in terms of keeping material equal in the short term. Getting this e5 pawn. Super tactically complicated, though. And that's really what this is about, you know. I mean, you're basically in a situation where, you know, if you're to look at, like, strategies here, like, it's not really a strategic position. It's sort of a tactically complicated position where everyone's looking for, like, the best options. It's tricky. Tough to find out exactly what you're supposed to do. So here, basically, I think you just kind of, you know, you rely on your tactical training and execute to the best of your situation. But you kind of, you've moved out of the phase of the game where you're planning strategically or relying on opening preparation. Here, Black's just basically somewhat up in a tactically complicated position, and you know, White's doing his best to equalize, and then he does successfully. So you know, everything ended up liquidated in the center, and Black is in good shape, or White is in good shape. Both sides are equal here. White's using this back rank mate tactic to defend the rook, and yeah, it looks like it played out great actually. Yeah, White's better here heading into a winning endgame. But where were the improvements here? So I think the first one was basically with that. The first thing to think about is this bishop to g5 move is not theory. Not saying it's bad, but it's not the managing move. Yeah, no. I think you did great with that meta. I think you know, honestly, I have trouble with these kinds of positions where you're out of strategic planning and you're out of opening theory, because at the end of the day, it comes down to how well you can execute tactically. And that's, you know, something that I can tell, you know, I can explain a best plan for, but it's training that you're going to have to do on your own. And I think you did a great job in that position. I mean, basically, you were down 2.5 pawns, and then you equalized. So you know, you did excellently out of the position where you were slightly down. So very strong tactics there. But you know, I don't know how much value I can add to that. You know, it just comes to like you having strong tactics and strong ability to, like, what the grandmasters always use the phrase "play chess." I don't think you can. I think that's training that you have to do solo at the end of the day. So I think where I can help the most is, like, you know, bishop g5 here is interesting, but not, you know, not opening theory. I do think you made the right decision in avoiding this, you know, in avoiding this pawn structure. This pawn structure makes, you know, basically makes the e5 pawn well controlled, but overall liquidates the white center. So I think moving the bishop is the right idea. But the preferred move, I think, is you know what was actually really interesting? I saw someone play bishop e5 the other day, and that seemed to work pretty well. But the preferred move here is bishop to g3. You know, frequently the bishop doesn't actually take on g3, and if he does, I think that actually improves your position with this increased mobility. But bishop to g5, yeah, bishop to e5 is actually pretty interesting. If you look at the eval here, it's not actually that much worse. I was just thinking, because it was such an unusual looking move, and it doesn't. The thing about it is, it doesn't mess up the pawn structure. It keeps the pawn structure fine. The bad pawn structure that it's worth moving the bishop to avoid is the one that happens here. This is a noticeably weaker pawn structure. But what's actually funny about bishop to e5 is that its sides. So basically, I'm saying avoid bishop takes f4, pawn takes f4. That is not strong for white. But alternatives, bishop g3, bishop takes, pawn takes. That's fine. No problems there. Bishop takes d6 is also fine, but it moves black's pieces forward with queen to d6. But someone played bishop to e5, which looks super awkward, but actually works, because you retake with knight, and then you maintain this this healthy pawn structure. So I thought that was actually really funny when I saw that, because it actually solves a big problem there in an unusual looking way. I mean, you know, there are other reasons why it's probably not that great. Like, I think, you know, as a response, black might play like bnd7 or something like that. But it was actually surprisingly good. And that's sort of why I like doing these streams too, because I'm like, well, I would have never thought to do that. Like that's actually a really cool idea. And it was not in the opening book either. So I was like, really, that's actually really interesting. So I thought that was cool. Yeah, so because it doesn't move the queen forward and it doesn't double your pawns or mess up your pawn structure. But just so you know that the book move is bishop takes g3, pawn takes g3, and you get this open rook file as compensation. So that's good. But I was actually, but bishop g5, to be fair, is fine. That's it. It recognizes this problem of weakening your pawn structure with bishop takes f4. So bishop g5 is fine, but I'm saying bishop g3 is book. And bishop e5 was an idea that isn't book and that I never would have thought of, but one of the people watching thought of, and I actually think is probably objectively not the best, but it's actually an awesome idea. It's actually a really cool idea, and it's funny. It's a novel way to solve a problem in the situation. Interesting. BND2 objectively worse than things like Queen E2 and C3 and the open Ruy Lopez. That's a pretty specific question. I'd have to. It's a good question, Mohammed. I'd have to know exactly which situation you or which Ruy Lopez line you were looking at. I don't have the move order memorized by number in the open Ruy Lopez, but yeah, I mean, Queen E2 in the Ruy Lopez is definitely playable in some lines. C3, depending if C3's... I always think of C3 as being played, by move 6 or 7 in the Ruy Lopez. So I'm sort of... I'd have to look at the line, Mohammed. But if you send me the line, I'll play through it and try to come up with a good answer for that. It's a good question, though. Thank you very much for asking it. So yeah, so here, bishop G3 is book, probably objectively a little bit better. Yeah, but this plays out just fine for white. And then really the only, this E5 is interesting. Maybe, yeah, I think D5 probably is playable. I was wondering, the only thing I would think about is, yeah, but I think that's like move 7, or move like 7 or so, right? I'd have to look at the Ruy Lopez. I don't know the specific move order numbers, but I'm happy to look at it. In fact, we're actually good question, Mohammed. We're actually looking at Ruy Lopez tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So I'm writing down your question right now, Mohammed, and we'll look at that specific line in the Ruy Lopez tomorrow during the 10 a.m. stream. Because it's interesting. It's an interesting question, and I want to make sure that I give it the full my full attention. Yeah. So D takes E5 here, I think might be good. So Queen takes E5, F4. This is interesting. I mean, it's sort of loose, right? And it's like Black's going to get some tactics going on this D3 bishop. Yeah, no, for sure, Mohammed. I want to give that. It's a good question, and I want to give it, the right amount of time. So I was actually planning to do a Ruy Lopez rundown at the beginning of tomorrow's 10 a.m. stream, but I will make that question part of that rundown. So thank you very much. Always, everybody, just feel free to ask questions, and I'll try my best to answer them as well as I can. But it's a good question, and I want to give the right attention to it. Yeah, no, for sure. No, I completely understand. I completely understand Meta-Ray. Rook d8 is tricky. Rook d8 here, like, yeah. I mean, do you play? It looks pretty good for white, right? Yeah, good point. I was thinking of doing the tactic the other way. I was thinking like bishop e2, but because bishop e2, because the queen doesn't really gain anything on taking, and then you just get the open file. But yeah, actually, I like your tactical response there better. Totally. No. I like your tactic. I like your tactic better. I was looking at bishop e2, but queen f3 I think is an even better way to play that. Rook d1. Yeah, awesome. Totally. No. Good suggestion. I think, but yeah. So this this basically controls the center for white. Queen d4, and then the threats on bishop d3, which is sort of what I think would makes that position look awkward. You can actually tactically deal with pretty well with what your suggestion is. Queen takes d3, rook d1, and white is in good shape here. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So yeah, so the mainly the engine offers that as an improvement, but you can sort of see why this is better for white if white can get out of this pressure on d3. Like this center control is good. The pieces are all pretty well coordinated. You're probably going to get the d file with the rook, so this may be neutralizing the center here might be a better alternative. And then here, the c4 pawn, knight c4. After looking at it, was sort of an overrated move here. So spending the bishop, basically forcing this bishop onto this relatively unproductive diagonal here, is not as good as moving the bishop to the c2 diagonal and maintaining this thing, because knight c4 is actually dealt with pretty well by b3. That's the logic on bishop to c2 improvement. Yeah. No, I mean, none of it's so much easier in analysis, with the engine calculating all the tactics and the full ability to look at strategy without having the game be live. It's easy to see it's much easier to see these after the fact. But hopefully next time it'll be easier to see kind of the main line of strategy. Is f5 an idea for black? Yeah. Well, what ends up happening, I think, is relatively good for black. I think f5 is an interesting move. I mean, it's challenging to white, right? So that's definitely that's definitely the case. I don't. But at the same time, it opens up black's king side. So it's possible. Let's say bishop to c2, and then f5 here. E takes f5. Well, I mean, also, yeah, no, for sure. So king h8 would have to probably go along with f5, because I do think that f5 weakens the king side. But here, and also, if the bishop plays to c2 as opposed to e2, then f5 isn't playable. But if the bishop goes to, or actually maybe f5 is playable. Pawn takes f5. Yeah, this looks playable. I think you have to trade off the c pawn for the d5 pawn first, and draw the e pawn away from from the defense of the f5 square. But f5, pawn takes f5, f5, and I think here, yeah, I think this is pretty good for I think this is pretty good for black. It's yes. So the answer is Electric Horse. Thank you for asking the question. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. It does a lot to control the center for black. It just has the characteristic that it opens this long diagonal on the king, and you'll need to keep an eye on that as black maintaining your king safety. But yeah, totally, it's an idea for black. Good idea for black. It controls the center, puts pressure on the center. A little bit double-edged, but a good idea for black. So thank you for asking the question, Electric. But going back to the game, bishop to e2. Yeah, no, I agree, Electric. It's an interesting thing, but it is an idea, and it looks valid, and it has no refutation in the notation. Yeah, no, it's a good idea. It controls the center, but it does look risky. But I think it's a good idea. It controls the center, and king h8 is available. So, good question. So yeah, so here is one other improvement for white in this game. Bishop c2, knight c4 is pretty easily dealt with, and the amount of time that the knight would take after b3 and getting stuck on this rook file, bishop d3. So it's like, okay, you got the bishop, the white squared bishop for one of your knights, but now this knight is pretty displaced and not doing anything. So the knight c4 threat looks dangerous, but is not actually that valuable. And for that reason, keeping the bishop on this more productive set of diagonals is an improvement for white. And then I just want to go through this. Here, b4 I think was an overextension. The b4 pawn becomes loose and attacked by this queen. I understand wanting to take the c5 knight away from this outpost, but I think that should come either maybe with a3 as prep, maybe, or queen c1, and then, you know, not worrying about this knight. I guess, I don't know. Here with b4, you know, this problem of this loose pawn becomes more of a challenge to this knight than, you know, basically holding on to this pawn will become a liability for white. This pawn will become a liability for white. So I think probably not playing this pawn to b4 and making it a loose, more takeable pawn might be better. Like, it's worth, you know, the knight being outposted on c5 for a few moves is less of a problem than having a pawn that's isolated and attackable like this. So for that reason, I think not playing b4 and instead playing either the queen move or a queen move or a rook move here, I think those are an improvement over b4. So in terms of takeaways, I think, yep, probably. Yeah, no, I think a3 b4 is not actually the right solution. It was one that I was looking at, but I think it's not. I think this is not that great. I think instead it's more important to just avoid giving up b4 than it is to yeah, definitely some tactics here for sure. Yeah, it's super complicated tactics in the center actually. But I think b4 becomes too loose, and for that reason, just leaving the knight on c5 for a few more moves is less of a problem than b4 becomes for white. Is the main reason to not play b4. Yes, Jen drew it for me. Jen drew it for me, and it's awesome. It was really, really nice of Jen to draw that for me, and yeah, I'm glad you guys like it because I love it. It's a very appropriate first emote on the channel. I think Jen was drawing an avocado too. But yeah, no, I think I say tactics so much on this channel that that putting that as the emote that's usable on the stream is was very important and a great contribution by Jen. Jen's my girlfriend. Jen is awesome and super supportive of the stream. So yeah, she drew the tactics emoji emote and is awesome. And there she is. And there, here, this is Jen.
I'll come out later.
Yeah, all right. Jen is over there. But yeah, but Jen is Jen drew the yes. She shows up sometimes. She doesn't feel like being on camera at the moment. But she's awesome and super helpful to the stream. So anyways, yeah, she's the best, and she drew the tactics emoji, which is hilarious and looks cool with sunglasses and is awesome. So it was really nice of her to draw it. And then from here, MetaRay, I think you did a great job with this. I think you did a great job with equalizing here tactically. But those are the takeaways. Nah, she's not at chess, is my answer to that question. This yeah, this so those are the takeaways. Bishop g5 versus bishop g3. Bishop g3 is book. Bishop g5 is probably fine, but bishop g3 is book and slightly better. Here, basically, neutralizing the center is an idea and probably an improvement. And then the third thing was I think bishop should go to c2 and maintain better diagonals, just because knight to c4 is is sort of a threat that looks more dangerous than it actually is. And then also this b4 move ends up causing some problems with the loose b4. So I guess I would say that the second of those, or the last two of those, are probably the most important. And to be honest, they're all things that only that analysis finds. But they're ideas that I think might be helpful in the future. So it's really tough to find any of these things over the game. But they're I think potential areas to focus on and consider when making decisions in future games. But I think after this, white plays excellently and does a great job tactically equalizing here. Really makes sense. Everything, basically clear off 2 pawns by utilizing this back rank threat with the rook. Awesome. And yeah, good shape for white here. Good ideas. Yeah, thank you very much for sending the game, MetaRay. Thank you very much for joining the stream, and yeah, I hope to see you back here. And please feel free to send more games over. I really appreciate you sending that. It had a lot of very interesting points in it, and thank you for being here. All right, we've got 2 more, so I just want to take a look at these. We have Smiggy's game at the. Let's take a look at Smiggy's game next. I feel bad for keeping him waiting, but we've gone a little bit over time today because I really wanted to look at that last one in detail. So all right, Smiggy's game is here, and I'm ready to take a look at it. I feel bad that it took a bit of time to get to it. Let's look. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being patient, Smiggy. Usually these sessions last about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. But today I'm actually missing. Yeah, we're gonna go to at least I think 2:25, 2:30 today. Yeah, no, I've still got some games. No. So
Sorry.
Yeah, Jen is getting hungry for lunch. But no. We have 2 more games to go over, and thank you very much for being patient, Smiggy, for being patient, because I know that this one has gone on longer than they usually do. But I'm not doing one tonight, just in case anyone's watching. I'm going to do like a birthday party or thing with Jen that
He's got a fully vaccinated belated birthday party happening tonight, and he has no idea what it is, so feel free to guess in the comments.
Yeah.
I will not tell you whether or not you were right.
Thank you, Jen. But yeah, no, Jen's taking me out to a birthday thing tonight, so I'm not doing the normal 6:05 p.m. stream. But tomorrow we'll be back to normal. But I wanted to make up for it by going along today. Yes. I don't know where the location is either, to be completely honest. So we'll see, I guess. But yeah, thank you for being patient, Smiggy. Sorry for going over today. Knight f3, knight c6, e5. Okay. This is interesting. This is an aggressive way for white to play this. I think this probably is not a good idea. Looks like that pawn is overextended, but it does actually have a few games in this master opening book, so I'm sort of interested in seeing what the tactics are. I feel like this is pretty easily undermined with like d5. That would be something. That would be cool. Hey, I sounds like a good opportunity to me. But yeah, d5 here, c3, e6, d4. Yeah, no, I've never seen that before either, Smiggy, to be honest. I think, basically one of the things here that's important in the Sicilian is, normally the thing about the Sicilian is that, e4 basically prevents d5, right? So, the main point in the Sicilian is, and this is just the Sicilian main line, knight takes, knight f6. d5 can never really be played very comfortably by, or say, not in this line. All right, e6. d5 is always a move that black wants to play and wants to play in a supported way. With e5, I think you can get this this conceptual d5 in very early. So e5 here, and then d5, and then pawn takes d6, d6. And the only move here that really successfully prevents d5 is c4. But even that's kind of not that great, because on c4, d5 gets played, pawn takes, queen takes d5, and here basically this this queen is vulnerable, but the queen pawn is isolated, so black's pawn structure is better. Basically, it's two pawn islands versus 3 here. So black's pawn structure is better in this case. So, white either lets black have d5 in this case, in which case black is in very good shape and controlling the center, or trades the c4 pawn for d5, in which case black ends up with a better pawn structure. So I think that's the reason why e5 might be weak here. So immediate d5 is my idea. The engine is also looking at e6 and then like d5 on the next move. But this is a little bit more fractured. So like, pawn takes d6, bishop takes d6. I'm guessing this is still good for black, but it doesn't have quite the same amount of center control with the pawns that d5 has. Oh, thank you very much for the subscribe, Smiggy. Yeah, I really appreciate having you here, and thank you very much for joining the stream. Thank you, Electric Horse. I think the best way, the best way that we're trying to do now is just using the game submission section of the Discord. And here's the link to the Discord, Electric Horse. It's just feel free to submit as many games as really as many games as you want. Not 100, but 5. Submit as many games as you want within reason, and I'm super happy to do them on the streams. And yeah, just keep. I can always use more material. That's the best place for you. Or that's the best place for you to submit games there, Electric. Thank you very much for asking the question, and yeah, look forward to taking a look at games or lesson ideas that you want to send in. Yeah, no, thanks, Smiggy, and thank you very much for the subscribe, Smiggy. I really appreciate you joining the stream and appreciate you helping the stream by sending material. So the dragon is the dragon makes sense. So you're transposing it into the dragon, this looks, I think, objectively good for black here. E5 got overextended, and then black didn't make much of an effort to retain it. So here, standard. Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Electric. One other thing, just in case anyone's ever wondering about this, I'm totally fine if you guys want to watch the video on demand. My goal here really is just to try to make as much. And thank you very much, top of the list. Thank you very much for the follow. My goal here is really just to create free and available instructional chess content. That's sort of what my main goal here is. So always feel free to just watch video on demand. Every lesson that I do is up on video on demand on Twitch for at least 14 days. Ideally, it would be held there forever, but I don't really know how to do that super well. So basically, if you ever can't make a lesson, feel free to watch it video on demand on recording. That said, it's probably better if you come forward the lesson, just because you can tell me what your ideas are as we're going. I'll make your lesson the 10 a.m. stream for sure, Electric Horse. But also never feel bad about just watching video on demand or whatever. I'll do the analysis either way, the goal is just the free chess content. I'll make yours at 10 a.m. But not offended at all if if your game ever comes up for a 6 p.m. stream and you can't make it, or if anything about my schedule isn't good, you feel free to watch on demand. It's there for 14 days, and I would make it infinite if I could. Yeah, no, totally electric. Good, no, good question, and feel free. Yeah, but but the game you send electric, I will make a 10 a.m. for sure. Probably on I mean, depending on when you send it in, either tomorrow or the day after. But thank you very much for sending games to look at, Electric. I really appreciate it. Is E6 a good idea here? Yeah, probably. E6 is definitely a good idea in general. Yeah. I think yeah, E6 is a good general idea. The move, so Smiggy, so I think what you're doing is just fine. I think standard development here is good and strong for black. I mean you play the moves that make sense. Castles, d5. But I think the move here that I would put more focus on here is after this e5 pawn is gone. I think I would play d5. D5 makes the best, most pressing, control of the center. It basically supports e4 and gives black some space to develop. Both his bishop to d7, his bishop to maybe f5 or g4 later. But d5 I think is the most challenging move that black can play here. A good way for black to improve his situation. Knight f6 is also fine. In general, but I think I get the names confused, to be completely honest, Electric. But e6 is a very common Sicilian line, and it helps support the move d5, which is the main one of black's main strategic goals in the Sicilian is to control center square with d5. So here, yeah, I think d5 is probably the way to go. This really does give good. This does give good center control. Against the Sicilian, d5 can often be a very valuable move. Yeah, no, I should know the name. To be completely honest, I don't know the names all by heart. But but yeah, I think you're right. I think the Taimanov would come out of d. I think it comes out of e6. Yeah, G6 is normally the dragon, and the Svenigan. They all have different. Sicilian Alpin is a white divergence. But yeah, so basically you've gotten a free pawn here, which is great, and then d5 is coming up soon, and is in I think a pretty good way for black to capture the center early. Here, black's winning. Black has, basically you've gotten the e5 pawn for free. So I think you can just sort of calmly develop in a relatively normal way, and good things will happen. Mohammed also asked about e6 earlier. Is e6 playable? Yes. E6 I think is very playable. I would play d5 first, but you could also set that up with e6 and then d5. Is also a solid way to do it. But here again, as Mohammed suggested, e6 I think is a pretty good move. E6, you have to be a little careful because there's a pin on the king still if you delay castling with e6. But here, I would say knight c3, e6, and then white does something, and then you can play bishop takes c3, which has some disadvantages. But then you can really control the center with d5, and then black's basically got control of the center for the rest of the game. But I like the way that black has played this. Yeah. Interesting. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah. No. Thank you all very much for getting to 300 subscribers. Honestly, I'm mostly focused on the chess side, and I appreciate everyone joining in and contributing material to the stream and making the stream run smoothly and stuff. I try not to look too closely at the subscribers, but that is a big number, and I really appreciate all you guys for helping the stream get to 300 followers. Oh, oops, followers. I mean, I'm not great with Twitch, but I'm learning a little bit. But thank you all very much for helping the stream, and that is a milestone. So cool. Thanks all for your help on that. I really appreciate having you here and your interest. Um, yeah, so here, this basically controls the center for black for the rest of the game. Good shape. So e6, like Muhammad suggested, I think is a really is a good play here. Um, Bishop takes b2, wins material. The engine is suggesting e6. Okay. Right. So here, I think is a tactical improvement, in this game. The knight plays to d5, and I think this is mainly a tactical consideration. But knight, so you're making a choice with bishop takes b2 here. Bishop takes b2 is an interesting move, but the issue but it's a trade for this e7 pawn. The bishop's defending the e7 pawn, and if you move the bishop off of this diagonal, white can take this this center pawn. So if bishop takes b2, knight takes e7, then it's check and the king has to move. And you've basically traded this b2 pawn for this e7 pawn. And I think because the e7 pawn is a center pawn, it's not necessarily the best trade for you. So for that reason, I think, basically this pawn for this pawn and the knight advancing to e7 is not the best trade. I think the best move instead is e6. So with e6, you have the pawn threatening the knight, so the knight has to move, and then the knight takes the queen, and the queen takes the knight. Yeah, and it activates his rook as well. It does fracture his pawn structure, but it fractures yours too. I mean, you fracture his into 3 pieces, and he fractures yours into 2 by taking the e7 pawn. But overall, I think that's not the best trade. I think maybe even keeping I think e6 and trading off the fianchettoed bishop for the advanced knight is better. Now trading the fianchettoed bishop for the advanced knight is also not a great trade in isolation. But the thing about it is that white's follow-ups are not that good, and they're going to allow you to follow up with the d5. Yeah, no, and I think that's right. I mean, in isolation, that bishop is better than that knight. So if that was the only, yes, no, I completely agree with you. So if the trade was just that bishop for just that knight, blind to other considerations in that position, then I think that's not a good trade for black. So I completely understand the reason for not wanting to trade the bishop for the knight there. I think the bishop on the fianchetto is more valuable than a threatenable knight generally. But the other parts of the position are what makes it worthwhile. So after queen takes f6 here on e6, the queen has an attack on c3 that must be dealt with. But more importantly, white will play c3 probably as a response. This move e6 with d5 or d5 with e6 behind it is going to basically win the center for black for the rest of the game. The bishop will go here, or the bishop could go here, but this is just this is a great pawn structure for black. This is gonna hold well, and like either however white tries to approach it, either with say like bg7, just a random developing move on the next turn. This is great for black. This is great for black, and black will control the center with this strong and flexible pawn structure for the rest of the game. So that's why it's okay to trade the knight for the bishop there. Not because that's actually a good trade, but because e6 d5 is such an incredibly strong pawn structure for black. The bishop will go somewhere and you can kind of chase it around or whatever. Maybe you chase it around this way and you get the bishop to b7. But the really important part, the part of this trade, so bishop's on f6, the part of this trade that makes it worthwhile is the ability to play d5 and control the center as black for the rest of the game. That's why it's good. And also there's a tempo associated with it because of this threat on b2 by the queen now. But overall, that trade, I mean, it's just complicated because there's like 1 or 2 good reasons against and 3 good reasons for, or something like that. As opposed to bishop takes b2, which is a trade of the b2 pawn for the e7 pawn. So this is like trade number one, and then this e6 trade, this knight for this bishop, c3 and d5. It's a very complicated trade with other considerations in it. This trade is actually much better, mostly because this pawn structure is going to be so valuable. Hey, thank you very much, Noiz, for the follow. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for joining the stream, and yeah, happy to have you here. So e6, d5, c5. This pawn structure is gonna be solid for black and offsets the slight disadvantage of trading that knight for that bishop. That's the overall outcome of all that trading. What ends up happening is in practice you end up getting this excellent pawn structure anyways. You're in a very solid position. The black king side's a little bit loose and a little bit dangerous. You definitely have to be careful over here. But you're now up You're up a full piece. I mean, significant amount of material, and black is not going to be able to come up with, or white's not going to be able to come up with a mate here. You're winning this game. You should win this game with precise tactical play. I like this. I think this is great for black. Yeah, so it's a win for black. Awesome. So in terms of improvements for this game, Smiggy, thank you very much for setting this game. E5 is a really weird move. I think early D5s are probably the best. I think the attack was probably just not. I think the attack just wasn't worthwhile. It wasn't good enough for white there. Black was in good shape and winning. But I'm just thinking in terms of takeaways from this game. I understand the dragon. The advantage that I would say here is d5, pawn takes d6, pawn takes d6, and then be prepared to play d5 the next move. I showed in that other situation, but having a strong center for black in the Sicilian is a really valuable thing. So here, so that's my first kind of advice. I think I would play for an earlier d5 here. Muhammad also suggested e6 and d5. I think that's also a good idea, but I would make more aggressive challenges to white center here, because seizing the center control for black in this opening I think is a really good idea. And then second takeaway here, I think there was a tactical improvement here. Bishop takes b2 allows for knight takes e7. In this knight takes e7 case, you've traded the e pawn for the b pawn. And I don't think that's I think that trade is sort of not that great. I think it's probably fine, but not an optimal trade. Interestingly, this trade, which gives up this fianchettoed bishop for this knight, is actually very good for black. Not because he traded the knight for the bishop, but because it generates an immediate threat on b2, and because black gets a winning pawn center out of this. The bishop has to go somewhere. But basically, this pawn center for black is almost unapproachable. C4, yeah, no worries. And I go over this very frequently on this stream, but I think it's the most important thing. The most important thing, I think, and the thing that I want to reinforce the most about chess is something that I unfortunately can't teach, and I don't think most teachers can teach it. But it's basically, about tactical strength. The biggest difference between a class player and an expert player is their ability to execute well tactically. There's a reason why the emote that Jen was so nice to draw for me is that tactics emote, and that's the only one we have. It's always perfectly timed. It's the most important thing. I think, basically there's multiple trainers that you can use to learn tactics. But in order to make to expert level player, your tactical vision really needs to be good. There's study plans, there's different programs that you can use, but the most important thing is to put the time in on tactics if you want to get the quickest return on study time for improvement. The tools that I recommend are either chess.com Puzzle Battle, chess.com Puzzle Rush, Chess Tempo. There's one that I like called CT-ART. It's this program right here. It's the one that I used improving. I think it's pretty good. It does tactics and modules. But there's many different tactics programs, and they all kind of cover the same content. But the main thing is that you put in the sufficient amount of time on tactics, Smiggy. I can't teach it. It's just homework that every master has done, every expert has done to a degree. It's how you improve from being a class player to being a expert or master level player. I would say probably an hour or two of tactics a day for a month, and you'll have very noticeable improvements in your game. But it's up to you which program to use. Either the chess.com ones I mentioned, or Chess Tempo is a free one. I heard Puzzle Storm is good in Lead Chess, or ChessBase modules, or that CT-ART program. They're all good, and they will really help your vision for things like yeah, no, I think that's where you will see the best returns. The important thing is really just to be consistent. You can come up, there's this one, I think it's called like the woodpecker theory or whatever. But the most important thing in my mind is, not which routine you choose, but really just that you put sufficient amount of time in. If you do an hour a day for a month, then you're good. If you have 2 hours a day for a month, then you're better. But you really need to put the time in. That's where you will see the best returns on your time. Every master has done it. Yeah, thank you very much, Smiggy. Here's the Discord, and yeah, no, I mean, if you do 2 hours of tactics a day, I would bet anything that in a reasonable period of time, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you're really gonna be able to tell the difference. It really matters. Then you can go back and revisit, opening theory and strategic thinking and positional play. But the biggest differentiator between class level players and expert and master level players is the amount of tactics that that you put in at home. No teacher can make you do it. It's just weightlifting. It's just doing your homework. But if you do it, you will tangibly improve. I strongly feel that way. I really believe that that's the case. So that's where I would put emphasis on. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's just weightlifting. It's just you got to do it. If you do it, you'll be good, and you'll improve quickly. So yeah, so tactics will help. Good tactical vision that will help you see knight takes e7 each time. Because those are the types of things that happen that are the biggest differentiators in class level play. It is. No, I mean, chess is, you basically just have to play it in a tactically solid way. And if you can get to the point where your tactical vision is very good, that may be enough to get you to expert level. It really is. It just taking the time. It's not something that someone can teach you. It's just time that you have to kind of put in on your own, using whatever method you're most comfortable with. But I strongly believe in that recommendation, and it'll help you come up with evaluations for positions like these. So in terms of second takeaway, first takeaway is I'd make more of a challenge for d5 in this Sicilian game, and try to control the center. And then the second is this e6, knight takes f6, queen takes f6, and followed by d5 move. This is going to be by far, this is a very good trade for you. So this was a tactical improvement in your position. So that's another thing that I would think about here. Otherwise this all kind of turned out in your favor as black, and you're in very good shape. I mean, basically, you're up a piece, and you can just sort of walk this through to the end game. I think you're in good shape. Nothing. Just conservatively play into a win here, and you've got it. Yeah, so good game, Smiggy. Thank you very much for sending it. Please feel free to send more in the future. Very interested in seeing those and putting them into the stream. Yeah, my biggest takeaway, I would make bigger challenges for the center. And then there was that tactical improvement that had to do with trading that knight for the bishop, but getting the center. And then my biggest suggestion is put the time in on tactics, and you'll really improve. But thank you very much for sending it. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Smiggy. Thank you for being here. Very happy to have you here, and have a good day. Thanks. Okay. Last one for the stream, and it's from Mario, and I just want to load this up. This has been a long stream, but I appreciate having all the people here, and thank you all very much for your patience. So last game of the day, because there's no stream tonight, and we'll be done. This is a game that Mario played. Mario was playing as Black, and we'll look at this. Okay, cool. So Mario plays the Karo-Kan. His opponent plays the mainline Karo-Kan. I like the mainline Karo-Kan. Just so I've spent a lot of time on this before, but just so everyone understands the mainline Karo-Kan, this is how it goes. You'll know you played correctly if the queen takes d3 on queen takes the bishop on d3 on move 10. That's the framework that I've always used for doing this. But that is yeah, that's how I tend to know that I've played the Karo-Kan correctly. Bishop d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. So just so we all know this move order, mainline Karo-Kan, pawn takes e4, or sorry, e4, c6, d4, d5, knight c3, pawn takes d4, pawn takes e4, knight takes, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, knight f3, h5, knight f3, knight d7, h4, h6, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. That is the mainline Karo-Kan. One more time, mainline Karo-Kan, e4, c6, d4, d5, knight c3, pawn takes, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, h4, h6, knight f3, knight d7, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, bishop takes, queen takes. And you'll know you've done it correctly because the queen takes the bishop on move 10. That is the mainline Karo-Kan. Yeah, sure. I'll add it for this week, Aphelion. Thanks. I'll add it. Yeah, I'll add it for tomorrow. During the 6:05 p.m. The 6:05 p.m. stream, Aphelion. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for the ideas. Please, yeah, always keep them coming. It's this. Yeah, it's great. Super helpful. Yes. Or just want to make sure that it's yours. But yeah, it is. It is Tarash. Just let me. I just want to pull it up for my own notes, but I'm 100% sure that it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that that is. For some reason, the things are getting ordered weird. Let me just pull it up. Yeah, got it. It's in the 4 slot for tomorrow, Tarash. Thank you for asking, and it's helpful to make me double check my notes for sure. But it's in for tomorrow morning stream. We will do it then. Yep, 100%. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, so let's look at Mario's game. That's the mainline Karo-Kan. Just wanted to make sure everyone around knew it. Knight f3, knight d7. And this is sort of interesting. This is the Karo-Kan without h4, without that h4, h6 thing. Here, I think, yeah, e6, knight g f6. Let's look at the opening theory here. E6 is the most common move. Knight f6 is the most common move. I think bishop takes d3 isn't really that necessary. Unlike the other position where the h4 pawn is pushing down and forcing the rook or the bishop to h7. I don't think you need to take the bishop here. I think you can just leave the bishop on g6 to be taken. E6 or knight gf6. Say e6, castles, knight gf6, rook e1. and both sides will kind of develop in a normal way, and basically the position will continue here. Looks pretty good for both sides. I mean, I don't think either side has too serious an advantage. Bishop takes g6, h takes g6, taking towards the center. More pressure on h2 on this open file. Oh yeah, no worries, Aphelion. I'll put that in for tomorrow. Tomorrow at the 6:05 p.m. stream. 100% in for that Tal variation. I'm gonna try to do something a little different tomorrow, where I'm gonna go through openings in at least one of the slots. But yeah, tomorrow second slot for the 6:05 p.m. stream, Aphelion. Thank you very much for sending it. Yeah. So I think both sides can kind of develop comfortably here. I think knight e5 is a blunder for white. That seems to just hang the d pawn. Black is in a good situation here because white hung the d pawn. And yeah, and I think black is in good shape. Nothing much there. Yep, win for black. Cool, good job Mario on this win. Nice one. So let's go back and see if we can make any improvements. Overall, I think it's a pretty good game. This is a weird situation though. How are you supposed to play against the Caro-Kann without h4, h6? It has some similarities to main line. But I guess the main takeaway is something that Mario does correctly, which is, don't expend a tempo on bishop takes d3 if you don't have to. Make the bishop take on g6 and then improve your position and your mobility for your rook. That is the takeaway there. And then knight e5 was a blunder. And otherwise, I think black's playing a pretty good game. I want to look at the eval, but I think black's played this pretty accurately. I'm not seeing a whole lot of errors here. Knight takes e5 was a bad concept. That didn't work out for white. And overall, just yeah, solid game for black. Let's run the report. I bet this is a very accurate game for black. I wanted to look for an accuracy, and I think otherwise, black's played in a very intuitive way. White also helped him a bit because he put him in, but yeah, black's got a 95% accuracy. Let's look. Where are the mistakes here? I mean, looks like virtually every mistake is for white. They're really just... It looks like every mistake and every inaccuracy came after the position was more or less decided. I think we can try to make improvements here, but in practice, the difference between a mistake that gives you a 4-point advantage and a 6-point advantage isn't that big. Overall, I think Mario just played a good game, and it was decided before he made any mistakes, really. Let's look at this. Knight takes, queen takes. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that, Tarash. That's why I'm sort of like, the engine's counting all these mistakes, but it's like, mistakes that make the difference between -7 and -4, it's like, that's not really that important. The first mistake that the engine even finds here is king f8 versus a6. King f8 seems to just hang the a6 pawn, and there's nothing too dangerous here from king f8. So, I mean, they're all sort of volatile. It's yeah, but yeah, no. I mean, a 3-point difference between 7 and 4 is not a huge difference. Yeah, the engine's being really nitpicky about this. But yeah, I think Mario, you played a good game, and you were up pawns and great positional play before you really did much in the way of inefficiency. and those inefficiencies didn't matter because the game was decided. So yeah, so great game, Mario. No, 95% accuracy and solid play. Um, in terms of this opening, let's see actually what the I just want to spend like 3 minutes on this opening and then we'll call it a day for the stream. But here, bishop g6, knight f3, knight d7, and then white plays bishop d3. The main line is h4, which we were talking about as the main line in the Caro-Kann. But bishop d3, castles, knight gf6, and then black plays bishop takes g6, h takes. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, I don't see it. You basically go from opening theory to white hanging a pawn. So by here, the eval's probably, yeah, like almost -4. I don't understand exactly why the bishop took on f6 here for white. That's sort of not that much of an improvement, but yeah, I mean, look, this is main line. Or I mean, you basically played the main line moves as black. And then bishop d3 took us out of the main white theory here. And then you chose between e6 and knight gf6, both the two main lines. Analysis says both are fine. Analysis is also looking at queen c7, but, sort of whatever. GNF6, bishop takes, or sorry, you play e6, castles, GNF6. Yeah, not much to offer you there, Mario. Honestly, you were at this point you've basically played mainline theory. White's made some imperfect moves, and then you're up -2, and then it goes even more in your favor from there. Interesting game. The engine nitpicks on the fact that you hang the a7 pawn. The engine thinks your king was fine on e8 and would rather you have the a7 pawn. But overall, yeah, very solid one. But a cool question. I mean, what are you supposed to do? It does raise the question of what are you supposed to do in the mainline Caro-Kann when white doesn't play h4, and it's basically just ignore it. Play the moves that you'd play anyways, e6 and gna f6, and the one key part, don't play bishop takes d3 because that moves white forward with queen takes d3. If white's not pressuring you with h4 h5. Let him take your bishop on g6. Yeah, ignore it. No, you should just ignore it here. It's the way to play it. And knight takes, queen takes, and black's in good shape. But yeah, e6, knight f6, h takes, black's in a good place. I think maybe there, I guess I was thinking, and just to explain, why do you not take the bishop in this line and you do take the bishop in the h4, h5 line? Just to explain the theory behind that. It's just because here, h4, h6, hey, thank you very much for the follow, FFD. Thank you very much. Is c6, e6 Capablanca pawn structure? Yeah, I guess. It's semi-Slav pawn structure, right? But with the d5 pawn traded off for the e4 pawn. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I guess I don't know what you would call it. I think of this as being sort of semi-Slav, but Capablanca might be the right definition for it too. Not sure. Knight f7, h4, h6, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3. And why in this position does black take the bishop on d3? It's because the bishop taking on h7 doesn't help black in any way. If black ignores this, bishop takes h7, rook takes h7. This is basically junky for black. There's not much, this is not good for black. As opposed to the non-h4, h5 line, where white is retaking on e6 or on g6. This actually is good for black. That's why those two lines are different. Ideally, you wouldn't move the queen forward with d3, so you just let black take you on g6. But the recapture on g6 is good for black, while the recapture of the rook on rook h7 is good for white. That's why those two lines are different. So yeah, interesting thing. What do you do? What do you do in the Caro-Kann if the bishop, if basically h4, h5 isn't played, but bishop d3 still is? Just ignore it and let him take your bishop on g6. That's the answer to that question, and something interesting about this game. You played correctly and basically won the game pretty easily. Very accurate. Thank you very much for sending it, Mario. Good game. Very solid. And yeah, thank you all very much for being here. Went definitely long today, but there's no lesson tonight. So the next lesson for anyone here is at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. No night session, but we'll be back to the normal. We'll be back to the normal schedule tomorrow, and I really look forward to seeing you there. Thank you all very much for sending games and for talking in the chat. It's really it's great to have people who are interested, and it just makes the stream that much better. So thank you all very much for sending your games. I hope this was somewhat helpful, and I look forward. Yeah, thank you. No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, MetaRay. Please keep sending material. I really appreciate you guys helping so much with the stream by sending material and just everything. And yeah, no, I really appreciate having you here. Everybody have a good day, and I look forward to seeing you at the next stream, 10 a.m. Tomorrow morning. So thanks all. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Bye. Thanks.